Hey there, it's Blair here at Time Trades. Thanks for joining me this weekend. This is your weekly video for Sunday, July 10th. And lots to cover this week. Let's get into it. I'm going to start with the updates that I made to the small and medium pivot indicator in the TradingView script. So what we're looking at here in the queues is the time trade script, okay? And this was updated in the last week. And some of the updates that I made here are to add the polarity indicator to the small and medium pivots, and I'll go into that in a bit more detail. And I also added a little mouse hover here that shows the data range for small and medium pivots. So that's a nice little update, and it gives some clarity on how much data is embedded into the script. Okay, so let's go over the changes to small and medium pivots, and then after that, I will talk a little bit about the forecast that I made last week, which did not pan out, why I made that forecast, what I learned from the price action, and how the small and medium pivot upgrades can help in the future. Okay, so let's just start with the basics in terms of what's changed in the script here. You'll notice that there is a plus and a minus indicator by the SP for small pivot and MP for medium pivot. And what that means is it's really a polarity indicator. So if you could imagine a function that oscillates between positive values and negative values, really the MP and the SP labels appear when that function crosses zero, okay? So a positive polarity indicates it's crossing zero going up. A negative polarity indicates it's crossing zero going down. Okay, so that's the basics of the negative and positive and what that label means. So how can we use it? And this is where we get into my unsuccessful bearish forecast of the last week. That's okay, nobody's perfect. But I will share my thinking about why I made that forecast and what I learned from it. So right around here, I thought that this small pivot cycle in the queues was going to extend steeply down because I was looking back at the prior small pivot cycle here within the same medium pivot cycle. So I was expecting that this time period here from June 1st through to June 14th was really going to be an analog for this time period here for June 29th through July 13th. And that choice of analog failed. Okay, that was the wrong choice, obviously, because we've been going up the last 3 days pretty strongly here. Okay, so what did I learn from that? Well, the takeaway is that it's really important to look at small pivots in the context of where they are in the broader medium pivot cycle, okay? Small pivots cannot be examined sort of in isolation. They need to be looked at in the context of the similar spot in the medium pivot cycle. So this medium pivot cycle has a negative polarity, okay? So that started back on May 21st. So let's go back and take a look at the last medium pivot cycle with negative polarity. That's the one that started January 22nd here. So you can see here that at the tail end of that medium pivot cycle that started January 22nd, we can see there was a negative small pivot and about 3 red days. And then we started a big pump up into the high in late March, okay? And that is the correct analog to be using right now because it captures both where we are in the medium pivot cycle and also in the small pivot cycle. So that's what I should have used. So now with the addition of the polarity indicator in the small pivot, it's going to be a lot easier to identify these analogs. And one of the things that you can do here, and I'll just turn this on quickly, is you can create, no, that's the wrong one. This is the one I want. You can just draw some rectangles on your trading view with the similar time periods, okay? So here the green box matches back to this green box, the yellow box matches back to that yellow box, and the purple box matches back to that purple box. And you can see there's a rough correlation in terms of direction, right? You know, so both of these purple boxes finished lower with a bottom within like 1 or 2 days of the end of the small pivot cycle. And then the yellow had a bit of a recovery in both cases, slightly different timeframes within that positive small pivot, but both had a recovery. And then green green was very strong back in March. That kicked off sort of the final push up into the medium pivot high on March 5th. And I believe we're starting that now. So I identified this mistake, I think, on Thursday based on the price action and flipped to bullish. One of the things that I used, one of the techniques I used to, I guess, you know, identify when I was wrong was a channel. So by employing channels within a medium pivot cycle, I think that's a useful technique. Now, this is all this stuff that I'm talking about is pretty new, and I'm still kind of, you know, figuring out the best way to use it. So keep that in mind. This is not, you know, like a multi-year proven technique, but if you just draw a simple channel within a single medium pivot cycle here, you can get a very good idea of, you know, hey, when is there going to be a change? And when this channel breaks down, that was a very clear change in trend. And in my opinion, we're going to be heading up into a high between this small pivot on July 13th and the medium pivot on July 18th. Okay, so that's coming up within the next week or so. And if we go back and take a look at what happened last time, and you can see here there was we made a high slightly after that small pivot between the small pivot and the medium pivot cycle, okay? Now, one of the other tactics that I've discovered in using these small pivots and medium pivots is what I call price bracketing. So let's drop down into like a 1 hour time frame, and we can take a look at what I mean by that. So by price bracketing, if we scroll over to a medium pivot here, check this out. If I put my mouse over this small pivot here, so what we're looking for is the two small pivots that surround or bracket a medium pivot, okay? So if I put my mouse over the small pivot, you can see that the price basically matches the small pivot afterwards, right? So we got that drop down into the medium pivot, and then price recovered, and then the price ended up matching on the days of the small pivot. So I found this really interesting. So I went back in time to see if this was a repeating behavior. So let's find another medium pivot here. So here's the medium pivot back on April 6th. And we've got a small pivot here prior to that medium pivot on March 24th, and the small pivot after. And you can see again how that price bracketing worked out very, very well. So as we come up into the end of this medium pivot cycle, this little price bracketing technique is something that I'll be watching for. So whatever price, I'm going to make the assumption that whatever price we happen to see on July 13th with this small pivot cycle, I'm going to be assuming that it's in that ballpark on July 26th. So it'll be interesting to see if that plays out. Okay, so that's really what I learned this week in terms of how to make best use of the small pivot and medium pivots. And I also added upgrades to the TradingView script to indicate polarity. And that should help you in interpreting these as well and finding the right analogs. Okay, so let's drop into a review of what's coming up on time trades. So we're going to flip over to the time trades web application. And it's been another week of incremental improvements to the machine learning engine. And I think you'll agree with me that it's a lot cleaner and easier to interpret now. So again, some technical improvements to the machine learning core are behind this, as well as adding a few more data points, such as lunar phase quarters, like Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, et cetera. So that's helped to smooth things out a little bit. And I'm personally really happy with the clarity that we're getting now. So let's just go through our indexes as per usual. We're looking at the Qs, and we can see here that we've got 3 pretty bullish days, with the lowest probability being 51% of a 2 standard deviation high on July 12th. So also, one thing also to keep in mind is the next CPI data release, I believe, is the 12th. I haven't double checked that. So watch out for some volatility there. Of course, the last CPI data release was, that really kicked off a big flush down over here a month ago. So that's something to be aware of. Okay, but yeah, it looks like we've got 3 bullish days in the forecast here, and then followed by another move down. Looking ahead, it looks like September has the potential to be a very red month over here with a big cluster of 2 standard deviation down days. Okay, so let's look at spiders. All right, so spiders actually contradicts the QQQ forecast. That's okay, that happens. That's why we look at multiple indexes and multiple stocks. It's forecasting basically down for most of the week. You can just tell by looking at the activity in the decline swim lane up here and compare it to the activity in the increased swim lane down here, and see that in general it's bearish for the spiders. So let's look at diamonds. Diamonds aligns a little bit more closely with the Qs. We've got a couple of updates here, the 12th and 13th. We also have a little bit of a pivot low. And then we can see steadily increasing down periods as we progress into September. Okay, so again, it looks like the general trend is down for the diamonds. Let's look at IWM. Okay, IWM has a big pop forecast for July 12th. This is an isolated bar, so it might be more of a one-off than an overall trend. That will be interesting to watch, to see what happens on Tuesday, to see if this forecast pop comes to fruition. We also have some pivot lows here. The biggest one is July 18th. And then after that, some pivot highs late in July, followed by some clusters of down days. So that's a quick summary of IWM. Let's take a look at bonds to see if we can get any clues from the bond forecast. IEF is the 7 to 10 year Treasury bond ETF. So we're looking at bond prices. Of course, rates or yields are the inverse of this. So the forecast is actually pretty bearish for bond prices. July 11th, all the way through August 10th. Okay, so this would indicate that the forecast is for yields going up with prices going down. Okay, so it looks like there's some more down pressure on bond prices based on this forecast. Okay. Okay, TLT, similar. We've got lots of down pressure on bond prices, which implies yields continuing to go up. That is not going to be a tailwind for stocks. That's going to be a very strong headwind for stocks if indeed this forecast comes to pass. Okay. Let's take a look at energy. I've been focused a lot on natural gas, but we'll start with oil. So USO is the oil ETF. And looks like we're going to have a couple days pop here early this week. And then we've got a longer cluster of down days with a pivot high on July 19th. So it looks like some opportunity for some good two-way trading here in the oil complex. The pop here, July 11th, July 12th, could be a good opportunity to look for some shorts heading into the end of the month, but then some bullish tailwinds appear to return in August. And next up, let's look at UNG. So I've been tweeting about UNG here, and there's a very nice cluster of 2 standard deviation moves up coming next week. So right now I am long UNG, anticipating this forecast here. But I'm given the volatility that we see in this underlying, it's important, to take profits as things go up. This is definitely not a buy and hold. I'll be looking to take profits, no later than July 19th. And we also have a pivot high July 21st here. Okay. All right, so that's UNG. Let's take a look at crypto. Okay, so the increased clarity is really helpful when it comes to crypto. We can see here that we're on the backside of a little cluster of an up move. So it looks like it's slowly leaking energy on the crypto side. And even though there's not much in terms of down pressure, when there's a decline in up pressure, that's often enough for price to go down. And there doesn't seem to be the start of a major new bullish move here anytime soon. Looks like August is going to be a red month for Bitcoin with this big cluster of 2 standard deviation down days. Let's take a quick look at Ethereum. All right, so Ethereum is arguably a little bit more bullish than Bitcoin, even though it tends to follow it in real life. But the forecast has a little cluster here of up days around July 14th, 15th, but then it's got a very similar cluster of down days during August. Okay, so directionally, there's it looks like we've got some more up and down sort of basing foundational work to do before we can see a low is in place in the major crypto coins. Okay, and we'll wrap things up today with a review of a couple of Indian stocks, but I want to choose those from the models page. So the models page, if you're not familiar, is a pretty powerful way to sort and filter all of the symbols that are in the time trade system. And what we can do here is we can choose the time frame that we want to look at. And in this case, I've chosen 5 trading days. And what the models page shows is the mean probability of a move up, move down, and pivot high, pivot low over that 5 trading days. So we filtered it by Indian stocks, and we can see here that these are the Indian stocks that have the highest mean move up for 2 standard deviation moves. So if we go and pick one, like I'm going to choose HCL Technologies here, we can go and take a look quickly and confirm that, yes, there's a nice ramp up here in terms of 2 standard deviation up days peaking July 13th. But at the same time, we also see a pretty high probability of pivot lows increasing through July 29th. So even though we may get a couple of up days, it looks like HCL has a little bit more basing work to do. However, after July 29th, as the pivot low probability goes down, we can see increasing probability of moves up here in early August and also in late August and early September. So I really like this cluster of 2 sets of moves up. This should take HCL into higher prices in early September. Okay, so with that, I'm going to close the call today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Good luck trading this week, and we'll talk again next week. Thank you.